Hi guys, I'm back. Now let me get up my notes here. Here we go. All right. So today I'm getting back into the Facebook Live world. Here we go. Okay. So today we're going to talk about how do you know you're dealing with trauma? Because that's my big focus right now. With codependency and trauma, there's a huge amount of overlap with the two because they're linked. And technically, codependency is a result of a certain kind of danger response the brain has. We're going to talk about that today, so stick around for that and also learn what the 5 Ps are that tell you you're dealing with trauma. All right, so welcome. If you don't know me, I'm Marshall Burtcher, and I help codependents, people pleasers, and trauma survivors take back their lives, rediscover their happiness, their confidence, love, and joy in their lives again. So today's topic is about how codependency and trauma are linked, and how do I know if I'm dealing with trauma. So a bit of background on me. I've been coaching in this for over 11 years. I am a survivor of both trauma and narcissistic abuse myself. I have 4 years of specialized training in trauma, and I have the additional 6 years of experience on top of that in helping people achieve closure in their trauma. Literally closure. We're not talking about coping and living with it. We're actually talking about feeling indifferent about the trauma event. You don't have feelings that are disturbing about it anymore. So that's a pretty big deal when it comes to trauma. You're no longer frozen or paralyzed. You're no longer dealing with background anxiety. You're actually feeling indifference, peace, and calm about it. So, all right, so let's get into this. How do I know I'm dealing with trauma? Well, specifically, there are 5 characteristics that tell you you're dealing with trauma. The first one's called being paralyzed, or P for paralyzed. And what this means is your body gets really rigid. You get really frozen when the idea of doing something comes up. Maybe it's walking out your door. Maybe it's going on a date. Maybe it's calling someone. Maybe it's standing up for yourself, saying no, asking for what you want. Maybe it's leaving something, stepping out of a relationship or a job. You get really paralyzed. You get locked into it. So the first of those 5 signals that tell you you're dealing with trauma is paralyzation. You feel paralyzed. You can't make a choice. Your body's really rigid. You feel cold. Blood flow gets constricted. Your breathing gets constricted. It's like, can't move. Feel frozen. So that's your first signal. The second signal is panicked. Got a huge amount of anxiety. Your mind is racing. You're sweating. Your heart's just going a billion miles an hour. You're panicked. You don't know what's going to happen. You're flustered. You're foggy. That's trauma talking right there, guys. Because trauma talks to us in very specific ways because it's actually an in-body experience. It's called a felt sense or somatic experience. Because trauma is not necessarily in the mind as much as it is here. Okay, that's one of the secrets to healing trauma is we got to get back into the body. Give the body what it needs, the trauma will go away. All right. So if we're being panicked about something, for instance, like in my own life, when dealing with trauma, I used to have an enormous amount of panic about being seen. And now here I am on Facebook doing this. And it's like, yeah, here we go. That's what we're doing. That's because a result of trauma around being exposed. So we return to a new baseline when we get our trauma resolved so that we're not being paralyzed with things. Hey, yeah. Hi, Melissa. So the third component of knowing if you're dealing with trauma is preoccupation. Other words for this are rumination or obsession. This is where our mind keeps coming back to the topic, back to the fear, back to the what if, over and over and over, and we can't seem to get out of it. Whatever we do, it just keeps coming back. We don't know how to deal with this. It just boom, 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 boom. And we want to get out of it, but we can't. It's typically very intrusive thoughts like, man, we do this, we're going to die. Or this is going to happen. Or what if this happens? And very disturbing, very, anxious. And sometimes paralyzing thoughts show up that way. So that's your third signal. And then there's preparation, catastrophic thinking or controlling outcomes. So your fourth P is prep. You're planning for the worst. You're bracing for the worst. You're reacting as though the worst is real. Okay? This actually is what sabotages a lot of our potential. Our brilliance gets really inhibited because we're out there working against an imaginary threat. Now, we think it's real because our brain and the way it works with fear and thought makes it real, but it's not actually happening out here, okay? So if you're constantly preparing for the worst, kind of avoiding things, and you don't actually have a situation that's going on that requires that kind of reaction or response, then trauma is talking in the background. And the third one is procrastination. If we're constantly procrastinating and avoiding what's happening to us or what we want or what we need to do, then we're talking with some low level but very loud trauma talking right there. It's keeping you stuck because procrastination is a combination of being paralyzed and panicked. It's like, can't act, don't act. Let's go over here and let's just watch The Good Place. Oh, that's better. But we don't actually do anything, right? We're stuck. So I have found over the last 10 years of doing this kind of work, procrastination is rooted in the fear of outcome being exposed. We get in there, we heal the traumas around that. Your procrastination is not going to exist anymore because you don't have those emotional associations with those events. Instead, you feel indifferent, calm, or peace, or playful. Those are dominantly the results clients actually experience in relationship to their traumatic events after they go through what I call the closure technique. Now, if you have these 5 Ps showing up in your life and they rate above, if you had a scale like 0 to 10 and 10 being, oh God, fire, and 0 being nothing, if it rates over a 6, you're likely dealing with an unresolved trauma. We need to get in there and start working on that. And there's some other signals that show up for you to confirm that you are dealing with trauma. Emotional flashbacks, like, whoa, where did this come from? I'm feeling really arrested and scared, just out of the blue. Dissociation, where you just kind of zone out and go to other places. You're not really in your body. You're not here with us. Foggy brain. Now, foggy brain can be a result of other things too. So if it's just foggy brain without these other symptoms, likely not trauma. It's likely something else going on. But foggy brain is a part of it, and there's a really good reason. It deals with how the brain functions in traumatic situations. Okay. And then intense reactivity to normal daily things, like leaving your house, asking questions, saying no, buying what you want, going into a social situation. If you're having an immense amount of paralyzation or anxiety towards normal daily things, you are dealing with trauma. Nightmares are another indicator of unresolved trauma. So if you're having that a lot, you're going to want to get in there and look at that very specifically to knock that out so you can have some peace. You can actually sleep again. Okay. So these are the 5 Ps that tell us that we are dealing with an unresolved traumatic event. So let's talk about why this happens. It all comes down to what happens after the person has experienced a life-threatening event. Okay? It's typically not the event that's the issue. It's what didn't happen afterwards that gets us stuck in this loop of feeling frozen. So to understand why we get frozen, we need to understand how the brain works when it deals with danger. So when the brain encounters a danger, something that's going to threaten its existence, it has 4 options it can choose from to keep you alive. So there's 4, out of these 4 options, well, let's explore those 4 options rather. I'll just stick with my script, okay? So the first one we all have heard of, it's the fight. I'm going to get out there, I'm going to kill it, I'm going to beat it, I'm going to neutralize the threat. So that's our fight response. And this is actually determined in the brain automatically, guys. So you have this organ in your brain called the amygdala, and it's called the seat of fear. It's what regulates our fear response. And it's connected to the limbic system, which is the primal or primitive aspect of our brain. And it tells the body whether to go into what's called arousal state, or SNS, sympathetic nervous response, or it tells it to go into PNS, which is parasympathetic response, or also known as relaxation. So what happens when a brain encounters a threat, it's going to calculate one of these 4 options, and then it's going to choose one, and then the amygdala will put the nervous system into a specific state of action or inaction. So if we encounter a threat and our brain says, ooh, I can kill it, we're going to go into a fight. We're going to get out there. We're going to get at it. This is because our brains determine that we can defeat it. We have a high probability of neutralizing the threat, so we're going to fight it. Now, this doesn't mean it's rational, guys. I mean, think of chihuahuas. They're all like, rah, 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 and there's these tiny little things. We can neutralize the chihuahua in a heartbeat, but the chihuahua thinks you're a threat, and it's bigger than you, so it's going to take you on. That not a really rational fight response there. So the second response the brain has is called flee. And this happens when the brain thinks it can outrun the threat. So it's like, ooh, I can't kill it, but I can outrun it, so it's going to just haul ass and get out there. This, too, is not always rational. We see this a lot when we watch humans respond to things like bears. The bear is big, but the bear can outrun us. But because of its size, we think we can outrun it. That bear will take us out in a heartbeat. So these responses are not necessarily rational. They're instinctual, and they're automatically done. So we just kind of get to live with it when it shows up. So we got to be aware of how we're responding so that we can constructively respond to it, because that's what helps mitigate trauma. So the third approach that shows up for our brain is if it can't fight it and it can't run from it, maybe it can negotiate with it. Maybe the brain says, hey, maybe I can make myself appealing to the threat so it'll like me and it'll keep me. And this is called fawning. And fawning is where codependency is developed. Because remember, codependency is a survival strategy for dealing with love neglect. When we encounter that love neglect, we feel threatened. Our livelihood, our well-being, our existence is threatened. And so we can't run from the parent, we can't fight the parent, but maybe we can make them like us, so they'll keep us. So this is where codependency and trauma are intrinsically linked. It's in this area. This is also why I'm a massive proponent of the idea that codependency is neither your identity, a disease, or a flaw in who you are. It's just how you survived the neglect and the abuse that came with your environment. All right. So, and it's also not, fawning can't always be reasonable either. I mean, we've as a species tried to fawn volcanoes by throwing in virgin sacrifices, yet the volcano still explodes. So, fawning has its irrational approach. And then there is freeze. And this is where we get ourselves into traumatic cycles. So if the brain can't outrun it, if it can't fight it, and if it can't please or negotiate with it, it's going to play dead. And this is where we lock down physically. We go into what's called armoring. Our muscles become very tight. Our breathing becomes extremely shallow. We play dead. And it's going to go away. This is actually what we're supposed to do with bears. Play dead. It'll whack us and then it'll go away. So these are the 4 states the brain goes into when it's experiencing a danger. It's like, what am I going to choose? What am I going to deal with here? But what determines if trauma forms is what happens after we have dealt with this, after we've experienced the threat. So when the threat is gone, we have to enter a state. Let's say we entered fight, for instance, and we won. Well, then we're not going to have much trauma left over that. We might have some things we need to deal with, but if we're being nurtured and cared for properly, we're going to work that out. If we ran and we succeeded, then we got to just determine that our circumstances are secure and we're able to take care of ourselves, and then we're going to feel safe. If we fawn, we instinctively know we're probably going to have to fawn more, so we actually go into a mild freeze state, okay? And if we freeze and we don't come out of freeze, then we're stuck in trauma. That's how it develops, because the energy, this intensity in our nervous system never gets a chance to dissipate back into its natural equilibrium of relaxation. Well, there's 2 reasons why this happens. One is, the first reason is our mental factor. How are we perceiving it? How do we think about our pain? How do we deal with it? How do we deal with threat? Do we deny our pain and our feeling? Do we try to act needless, like nothing's wrong? Do we numb out? Have we gone into a state of shock that we need to be nurtured out of? Because when our mental state isn't open to moving, then it's going to be very difficult to get that energy into the cycle it needs to be in. And the second component is our environment. Who are we dealing with? How are they responding to us? Are they making a safe space? Are they giving us kind physical touch? Are they speaking to us in kind ways? Are they validating us? Are they acknowledging our experience and validating it too? This is what helps us begin to regulate, is a safe environment with a safe person that can be a container for us to help us begin to express and experience what we're going through. Very, very important for us to regulate and get back into who we are, back into our bodies, back into our awareness. So these are the two factors that get in the way, because if these are not properly met, we will stay in that free state. We will not exit the state. And this leads to trauma. This leads to the paralyzation, the automatic response to something. This leads to the panicked energy and anxiety. This leads to the preoccupation because the brain's still trying to work it out. And so it can be safe. This leads to procrastination. That leads to being overly prepared because we're trying to work out the trauma and find equilibrium again, because that's all the nervous system wants, is to return to a state of safe relaxation. Now we've got to get it there. So this is what I'm going to be teaching you guys how to do in my upcoming course called Get Closure Now. So I'm really excited to help you accomplish this, because you can return to your normal. You do not have to live in trauma anymore. You get to be free. That's the beauty of it. And so I'm going to talk more about how I help you accomplish that with my 6-step process tomorrow at 4 p.m. But for now, I want you to consider this possibility. Who would you be if you felt indifference towards your traumatic events? What would you be doing differently in your life if that fear, that paralyzation, that anxiety, that procrastination was gone? That's what I want you to think about, because that is what's possible for you. And I can't wait to show you how you can accomplish that for yourself. So thank you guys for being here. I appreciate you. If you want coaching in this, or you want coaching in breaking free of codependency, just reach out to me. And remember that you're worth knowing, you're worth loving, and worth keeping. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow again at 4 p.m. Have a great day. Bye-bye.